Overconsumption is keeping you poor. I don't care who hates me for saying this, because this is the truth. Americans are known for their massive consumptions. Americans have larger homes than anyone in the world. They have higher rates of car ownership, and they love to spend money on stuff they don't need. How are Americans paying for all these goodies? Well, they can't afford it, yet they have it. Well, credit cards and consumer loans. According to a recent Wall Street Journal article, despite rising interest rates, high inflation, and shrinking savings, consumer spending has not slowed down. Instead, it's skyrocketed higher. Americans spent more on concerts, vacations, events, and clothing in 2023. So in this video, we're covering why the American culture is keeping you poor and how you have to break out of the mentality if you want to build any kind of wealth. How does America influence your spending? It's called the wealth effect. This is a psychological phenomenon that when people feel wealthier, they spend more, even if their income hasn't changed. Our culture is built upon a false sense of financial security, causing Americans to feel wealthier than they actually are, which in turn causes them to spend money they don't have. There are 6 factors that have made Americans feel wealthier than they are. Number 1, rise of home prices. Americans have seen the value of their homes go up dramatically since 2008, and they collectively pocketed about $280 billion from tapping the equity in their homes from refinancings. This is borrowed money based on the potential value of their asset, but they're spending it like it's cash in the bank. Number 2, high home prices. Again, rising home prices have caused more people to change their mind about buying a home at all, which historically they would be saving for. And so now that people are not saving for a down payment, they're finding new ways to spend that money. They're spending their money on once-in-a-lifetime experiences because they have no purpose to be smart with their money anymore. Number 3, stimulus checks. Americans were able to accumulate money from staying home during the pandemic for not working. This created a false sense of income and created new spending habits. Even when the checks ran out, the habits didn't break. Number 4, the unemployment rate. The current unemployment rate is the lowest it has ever been since 1960. And low unemployment means higher wages and job security for American workers, which gives them a false sense of security. Number 5, the YOLO mentality. And for you boomers out there, YOLO means you only live once. The pandemic may have trained everyone not to plan too far ahead because who knows what will happen with your job, with your health, with your life. So fuck it, right? Many millennials are spending today in case there's no tomorrow. And when tomorrow rolls around, they're in debt. Number 6, trying to beat inflation. We all see the cost of our goods rising, and some people are justifying their spending by saying they would rather buy now to avoid higher future prices. This is putting consumers in debt today, thinking it will avoid them being in debt tomorrow. 2 wrongs don't make a right. Spending today doesn't save money tomorrow. The economy is not doing as well as people are thinking. And based on this overconsumption, people are not planning for a very real and potentially scary future. So there's not only a false sense of personal financial security, but there's a false sense of security in the economy. We are being tricked into thinking our economy is okay, which is preventing Americans from proper decision making. On the surface, things look okay, like inflation, Federal Reserve rate, GDP, stock market, unemployment rate, mortgage rates, and consumer spending are all showing positive signs. But there are less publicized signs that are showing major red flags, like the yield curve. What is a yield curve? Imagine the yield curve as a graph that shows how much money you can earn by lending your money for different periods of time. Let's say you're lending money to the government by buying what's called a treasury bond. These bonds can be short-term, like just a few months, or long-term, like 10 or 30 years. In a normal situation, the yield curve slopes upward, meaning you get higher interest rate for lending money for longer periods of time. But sometimes the curve can flip or invert. This means that short-term bonds pay more interest than long-term ones, which is unusual. When this happens, it can signal that investors are worried about the economy in the near future and prefer to lock in their money for longer periods of time, at a secure rate, even if it's lower. Economists often see an inverted yield curve as a warning sign that a recession might be coming. This means unemployment will start going up, and this false sense of security we have will literally shatter. And at the rates Americans are spending, you won't have any cushion to fall back on. Now, as much as the economy is not in our own control, our own financial situation most definitely is. We may be influenced by the American spending culture, but we don't need to be victims of it. Here are 3 ways to start protecting yourself: creating wealth and preparing a more secure future, but also not compromising on the quality of your life today. The idea is balance. The solutions. Number 1, investing. I want you to imagine a treadmill. The treadmill speed is the speed of inflation, and your only goal is to stay on the treadmill. If you fall off, that is considered bankruptcy. If inflation is at 0%, the treadmill is not moving at all, and you can stand still on the treadmill and you can maintain your position, also known as your purchasing power, without any effort. If the inflation goes higher, then the treadmill starts moving. If you don't move, the inflation will push you backwards. In other words, you will lose purchasing power. So you start walking at the same pace as inflation just to maintain that purchasing power. But you have to put some effort into maintaining that purchasing power. You have to walk, and it takes energy. But how can we keep moving forward when we have little control over our own immediate income? This is where investing comes in. You can invest in assets that historically have outpaced inflation, such as stocks, real estate, and other appreciating assets. In essence, the key lies in making money work for you. Investing not only preserves your purchasing power, but it leads to growing wealth. Unlike spending money on clothes, vacations, and other things you don't need, investing your money has proven time and time again to be the best way to achieve true wealth. Here are 4 investments that will appreciate and protect you against inflation. First, real estate, specifically cash-flowing rental properties. A cash-flowing rental property is when you own a house that makes you more money than it costs you, resulting in positive cash flow. You use debt in a good way to buy the rental property. Your monthly mortgage payments and expenses are less than the rent you collect from the tenants you place in the house. Not only can you make money from the house itself appreciating, but you also are getting real cash in your pocket each month from the rental income. Using debt is the key to beating inflation because you're paying over time. 30 years from now, your mortgage payments will remain the same, but the value of the dollar will be less. So even though you're paying the same dollar amount, you're not paying the same value, which is letting you beat inflation. Number 2, precious metals. For example, gold. Gold has historically been a go-to asset during inflationary periods. Why? It's a tangible asset with intrinsic value. When inflation rises and the value of currency decreases, gold tends to hold its value or even appreciate. Investors often turn to gold as a store of value and a hedge against inflation. Number 3, stocks. Consider stocks of companies that have a track record of performing well during inflationary periods. These are often businesses with strong pricing power, meaning they can pass on increased costs to consumers. Think about industries like utilities, healthcare, consumer staples, which tend to weather inflation better. Number 4, TIPS, which stands for Treasury Inflation Protected Securities, for those of you who prefer a more conservative approach. These are U.S. Treasury bonds specifically designed to protect against inflation. The principal amount of TIPS increases with inflation, providing investors with a hedge against the rising cost of living. Solution number 2, budgeting. The 50-30-20 budgeting rule. Budgeting is often viewed as a mundane task, but its significance cannot be overstated. Personally, I find that implementing the 50-30-20 rule can be extremely effective. It suggests allocating 50% of your income to needs, 30% to wants, and 20% to investing and savings. Now let's see how this plays out in real life. Needs, 50%. Meet Bugs Bunny. He's got a monthly income of $5,000. His needs include rent, mortgage, utilities, groceries, insurance, and transportation. So 50% of his income, which is $2,500, goes into covering these essential expenses. So rent, $1,200, utilities, $150, Carrots, $300. Insurance, $200. Transportation, $650. Wants, 30%. Now let's talk about the fun stuff. Wants. The remaining 30% of Bugs Bunny's income, which is $1,500, is for discretionary spending. Dining out, $300, entertainment, $200, shopping, $500, hobbies, $250, miscellaneous, $250. Investing and savings, 20%. Last but definitely not least, savings and investing. Bugs Bunny is putting 20% of its income, which is $1,000, into savings and investing. This can be debt repayment, investing, or any financial goal he has. So debt repayment, $300, investment, $400, other financial goals, $300. By following the 50-30-20 rule, you have a clear guide on how to manage your income, cover essentials, enjoy life, and save for the future. The third solution is better decision making. Now we have to address the elephant in the room, our actual spending habits and choices. When it comes to discretionary spending, it's all about choices. We have the ability to choose what we spend our money on. We all have those moments when we want to treat ourselves, right? But how do we make sure it doesn't mess up our budget? First, decide your values. When you're spending your money, it all comes down to priorities and values. Before making a purchase, ask yourself, does this align with my goals and values? It's about finding a balance between enjoying the moment and staying true to long-term financial objectives. So take a moment to figure out what truly matters to you. This helps in aligning your spending with your values. Second, create boundaries. Like I mentioned before with the 50-30-20 rule, you're going to set a monthly limit for discretionary spendings. Having boundaries prevents impulse purchases and helps you stay within the 30% allocated for the wants. Lastly, number 3 is use the 24-hour rule. Ever heard of the 24-hour rule? Well, it's a game changer. Before making a non-essential purchase, give yourself 24 hours to think it over. This helps avoid impulse buying and make sure that when you spend, it's aligning with your values. You're basically allowing yourself to make more intentional choices. By using these solutions, you will change the trajectory of your future. Your future is not a coin toss. As much as our economy and culture is influencing us, it's our decision if we want to be influenced. You have the control within your hands. By investing, by budgeting, and consciously changing your spending habits, you can create a future and present where you are financially secure. Remember, in the realm of finance, knowledge is the anchor. If you guys enjoyed the video and found it useful, let me know by leaving a like or comment. And listen, I'm only here to help you make more money. If you want that too, hit the subscribe button and see you in the next one.